already been pre-wired, so by throwing the switches here, I can turn this loco into a battery-powered loco. I don't have to go into the pickups inside the loco and basically disconnect them or cut them or rewire them. So this represents the next generation, and we hope in time that this will get adopted by other manufacturers. I showed Chuck at USA. I thought this was really a great idea. I talked to Lewis about his, and he would have to do some modifications because his does not have battery connectors. It's hard for you guys to see, but on this big green circuit board, there's a terminal strip here. It says battery plus and minus. So it's real easy to do the installation. So the idea here is the radio control system it's a plug-in socket. It just plugs in and half the work is done. Why you see all these other wires is because we added a sound system to it. So that's why it gets maybe a little bit more spaghetti looking. There we go. All right. So those are the two basic installations that you have out there. And you don't have to be afraid of getting into these locos. This tender has 3 screws. It lifts right off. All right. The only thing that you have to do on this style is you have to drill a couple of holes because we have to mount the on-off switch. We have to mount a volume control if you have a sound system. And then there's also a charging jack that you can't see, but it's painted black to match the tender, so you don't have to remove the batteries. All right. Again, on this system, you would just mount everything in the convenience of a box car or a container car, and you have a cable and it just plugs in. So it's if you like to have it self-contained, then you go on board. If you want to have it in a trailer car, you can go this approach. All right. The system doesn't change. Whether you put it in a tender or in a box car or a trailer car, the technology is the same. The circuit boards, the batteries. You might have more room in here, so you could actually then get into larger batteries, and I'll talk about that in a moment. All right. So we just talked about, on my sheet here, I have this new PNP. PNP stands for plug and play. All right. And that's what this represents. Now the good news here is in my booth, I have another one of these locos, just like that one, and it has the plug and play board in it. So Aristocraft also has that socket in there so that you can take your system and plug it in. And again, by flipping this switch to battery, it saves a lot of rewiring. So in the past, maybe one of the reluctancies to get into battery power was, who's going to rewire the loco for me? All right. Well, a lot of us have that installation service available, but if you're comfortable with taking the shell off of an engine and doing some basic rewiring, we'll guide you through that. So it actually can get pretty easy nowadays to do this. Okay, I go on here talking about choosing the right throttle. All right, current requirements. All right, I'm going to get a little technical. All right, and as you can imagine, these engines, some of them are bigger, or when we have diesels, we might want to pull 20 cars or 30 cars. Well, it takes a lot more power to pull a long train than a short train. So when you're choosing the system, one of the conversations we need to have is how long you want to pull in your train. Is it a diesel? Because diesels have multiple motors versus a steam engine, which has one electric motor. So those are some considerations. So when you're looking at a system, you want to make sure that it has the capacity to pull that engine and not overheat and turn off. Because what we don't want to do is we don't want you to have a bad experience. Let's say you go through all this effort and you convert it and you're running it in 20 minutes, it stops. And all these systems are designed to shut off so they don't overheat or blow up. So that's just a little thing when it comes to what is the right system. Now for your real techie types here, you might want to run 3 diesels together. Or you might want to run what we call an ABA, which is a style of 3 different types of diesels. Well, you now have maybe 6 motors that you have to power, all right? And that requires a little bit more help. So I didn't want to get into that conversation right at the moment, but we could surely talk about that. In our booth, we have a new system. Bob was kind enough to design a new system for us, and it's a true 10 amp system. And it will handle 3 engines. But it has to be air cooled, and you'll see fans on this thing, which are kind of neat because the real fans are spinning. So we actually try to incorporate that into the models at the same time. So those are just some of the things that you need to be aware of. And I talk about single motor, dual motor, multiple units. So that's what we were just going over. All right. Up to this point, any questions? Any comments? I don't want to just rush through something and not address any particular. Yes, sir.
Every locomotive will have a separate radio transmitter.
Very good question. All right. The question is, does every separate loco, like I said, every separate engine have to have a transmitter? All right. And depending on the system that you choose, you might have one transmitter that will talk to hundreds of engines, all right? Or you might have a system that only talks to a few engines. So that's really something that you have to look at with that particular brand that you use. This particular brand will do up to 60 different engines, all right? 60. 60. And it's done by using what they call side channels, all right? This system was designed for more of a one-to-one relationship because it's just very, very small, but over the years it's evolved, so there's a little switch in the back and you can go to, we call them channels, but engine 1, engine 2, engine 3, that type of a thing. Now, those of us who have been doing battery power can also chime in here and give you some input, but it's tricky running multiple trains. It is really tricky. And that's when you end up paying somebody to fix what breaks. Because it's like, oh, they're going to hit. It's that kind of a thing. So I think most of us probably feel you can get away with maybe 2 at one time. But whether it's this system or it's the train engineer or it's Airwire or Localink, once you switch to the other engine, all right, it takes time to switch back. And that could be not enough time. So it's something just to consider, all right? But then again, if you're, and I mean this in a very positive way, if you're a garden railroader, that's okay, because maybe you have 2 loops, and all you want to do is turn one train on and it goes, and then you turn the other train on and it goes, and you're not worried about switches, you're not worried about station stops or something like that. So it depends on what you need to